about food and nutrition and mental health, obviously. So we've got a brilliant panel. Let me introduce the ones you can see first. So we've got B Schultz. Hi, B.
Hello,
Hello there.
everyone. I hope you can hear me, right?
Oh, we can just about hear you. Hello.
Can you actually hear me?
It's a little bit quiet, but you're coming through now.
Wait, I'm just switching up the volume. Is it better now?
It's still slightly low, but I should think it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get by with like that. B's a nutritionist and also an ambassador for the Burnt Chef project, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But which is a project charity for mental health for food workers and chefs, isn't it?
Yeah, basically for everyone who's working in the hospitality industry.
Excellent. Okay, and also on screen we've got James Clark, who's a nutritional expert, and is it St George's Mental Health Foundation Trust you work at, James?
No, it's actually West London NHS Trust I'm working.
Ah, okay.
Don't worry, I did previously work at St George's.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us anyway. That's
okay.
That's also fine. And the mystery man somewhere in the background is Lorenzo.
I am definitely here.
Okay, well, we might have
Modern technology is conspiring. Well, as I said, could not be a bad thing. So
I think we're going to have to plow ahead.
Please.
With you as a mystery voice.
Nice voice, though. So.
Well, thank you. You're most kind. Thank you.
Excuse me. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us. I mean, we've talked a lot about mental health today, and obviously there's a lot of aspects to that, and one of the things is the relationship to physical health, and obviously this is all tied up in nutrition and eating, and then there's of course the pleasure or therapeutic side of food. So we'll get to all that, and then we'll also just talk about food at some point, because that's what I really want to do. I've been eating peppermint aero bubbles all day, and that's pretty much it, which probably isn't what you'd recommend. So B, do you want to start off, tell us a bit of the background about what you do and how it relates to mental health?
Sure, thank you. So yeah, as you already said, I am a nutritionist, but I'm also a private chef. And I've worked many years as a recipe developer and as a hospitality consultant, and have joined the Burnt Chef project last year as an ambassador. The Burnt Chef project, as you already said, is a non-profit organization, and our major target is to raise awareness within all of the aspects in the hospitality sector about mental health, because it is one of the most stressful industries you can actually enter, and especially mental health is there still seen as a weakness. So one of our major slogans is F. the stigma. And yeah, so that is what we're doing. And my involvement in terms of nutritioning is, since I am a chef and I have been in the industry for a very long time, and I'm also a nutritionist, is to always give little nuggets and pieces of advice, how actual tiny little things you can do during the day in your nutrition will help to maintain a very healthy mental stability.
And thank you. And James, so on the day-to-day work side, what's your role when it comes to nutrition and mental health?
Yeah, so I'm a dietitian. I qualified about 10 years ago. I've been specialising in mental health since then. And my role is I work in a mental health trust in the NHS. And so day to day, I work in a team that supports people that are having their first episode of psychosis. And so I work with the service users in that team, and I suppose my role is mostly focused on trying to improve people's physical health from the point of view of nutrition, but also there is a big interplay between people's physical health and their mental health, and then diet can also have quite a big impact into someone's mental health. But I suppose from my point of view, I'm mostly working with people day to day to help improve their physical health. And part of that is because people that have mental health problems tend to have much higher rates of things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and even have and even have a 20-year lower life expectancy because of that. So that's what I'm kind of mostly working on.
And our third panelist, I've realised I've not properly introduced, is Lorenzo Stella, who's the manager of La Gaffe restaurant in Hampstead. So Lorenzo, how's it been welcoming customers back?
Well, it's been wonderful to finally be able to interact with people again and to be able to let them through our doors after 5 months of closure.
Oh, I feel you there.
That's great.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's been a very long 5 months.
and we've all missed it from the other side as well. How have you found the customers? Are they coming in slightly giddy?
On Monday, there was that initial excitement of being able to go out to eat indoors. So, because unfortunately we do not have the chance to have the opportunity to have any outside seating, so we had to wait until this Monday before we could officially open. So for those diners able to go and sit inside, it was lovely because a lot of people had missed us, and that was really quite lovely to have people coming by and expressing to us that they'd really missed coming in to see us and enjoy our food or coffee or even just for a chat. So thoroughly glad to see people again.
Well, that's great. It's great to hear, and it's certainly something we've all missed. I mean, as aside from the social aspect, there's our habits have changed over the last 18 months, haven't they? Are there simple things that perhaps bad habits we've slipped into, or things we could do that you think would help easily?
Yes, that is an excellent question, and that is something that I actually do right now on a day-to-day basis, because I don't know if you guys know that I'm actually based in Germany, so things there are still closed, so I have to work from somewhere else. So yes, so what I realized especially during those last 14 months, many people started to develop very unhealthy eating habits in terms of, and I completely get that. Everyone is stressed, everyone is a little bit on a bad mood. So let's say the daily sugar intake increased with so many people, and that is actually one of the most important things that I always recommend when I start working with someone. So yeah, one of the most important things is maintain your sugar intake. Basically maintain everything that's stressing the body and that's stressing the guts, because what most people need to understand in the beginning is mental health and the health of your guts and your body. They are actually very, very strongly connected. So when you put stuff in your body that stresses the guts and your whole body, that also has an effect then on the hormone level in your head, and that is when it all starts to spiral then. So usually it's only tiny little things that you have to do, but it already helps, like lower the sugar intake a little bit, don't go crazy on the processed food, maintain the carbs. And I don't say go all crazy vegan, low carb, no sugar, because that is not good for anyone. It's just having a healthy relationship with all of that stuff, like the carbs, processed food, sugar. Maintain your caffeine level. That is because we all know it. Caffeine is lovely. Seriously, I have to admit, I just had one before, because right now I'm not even in Germany. I'm 3 hours ahead of you, and I was quite tired. So I had a little coffee. Yeah, it's maintaining, finding a balance. I have my pizza and I sometimes have my chocolate bar. That's all fine. Just don't go crazy on everything.
That obviously sounds right. I mean, we had somebody I spoke to the other day pointed out that there's a flip side as well, isn't there? When lockdowns happened, there was a lot of emphasis on exercise and lifestyle and all that, but there are people with eating disorders out there.
Exactly.
that pressure was on as well, and could be harmful. Is that something you come across or deal with?
It's actually something that came across quite often, and actually very sadly, because for many people, especially those who actually needed treatment, there is already a massive increase in eating disorders. There's a massive increase in the numbers of cases which are suffering depression already. But since everything was on lockdown, there's not enough space and not enough therapists to take care of those people. Like, this is a very bad situation. So yes, I saw it. I'm actually working on it with many people, but it's quite tricky when you can't get professional help, because that's something I can help them find. Like at some points I can help them to readjust, but I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a shrink. That is the stuff where I stay away from. But yeah, there is massive increase, and that is the very bad side. Like, you're feeling helpless a little bit. You want to help them, but you can't provide the help they actually should need.
Absolutely. James, from your professional standpoint, what are the big challenges that have arisen in the last year that you've seen?
I think there's been a few things. I think a little bit like B said there, I think it's been very hard for people to maintain a routine.
Yes.
And, you know, like a general healthy eating pattern, you know, particularly if people have been on furlough or not able to work, it's very hard to maintain that routine. And once that kind of goes out the window, it's much harder to have a healthy diet.
Agree 100%.
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, when I'm working with people, that's often the first thing that we start working with. Once you've got some kind of meal pattern in place, then it's much easier for everything else to fit around that.
Yeah.
So
develop like fixed times for food. Many people, as soon as work stops or they're on furlough and they even have to maintain their finances, they have to learn again how to provide for themselves if they don't go for lunch at the workplace or something. Many people actually don't even know hunger anymore, because they're so used to the routine based on the work, and like you go out for dinner. So that is actually a big challenge for many people during the last couple of months, learning how to provide for themselves again. Many people had to start and learn cooking again because they couldn't go for the quick lunches anymore.
Perhaps we could bring Lorenzo in quickly, who obviously hasn't had to learn cooking again, but the routine you had before was obviously broken when the restaurant closed. Did you find your eating habits changed?
Absolutely, that's an excellent point that was made. Without having the structure of your day there from beginning to end, from breakfast through the first part of your work day to lunch to maybe a little tea break, it's amazing. Without having that subconscious structure there, it just goes wild, and you forget. That was an excellent point, because I found that happening to me often, where suddenly I would get to the point where I was thinking, I'm feeling a bit peckish, and I would look at the time and it was 3 o'clock, for example, in the afternoon, where normally I would have had lunch.
We have to open the door. I'm sorry. I will be back for you.
Go for it. This is the world of Zoom.
Yeah. And I think, I think one thing that you find when you do that kind of thing, Lorenzo, is that if you've accidentally missed a meal, by the time you can realize, you can end up just being very hungry.
Yes.
And at that point, it's really much harder for you to make healthy choices, and you're probably going to end up eating more than you normally would.
Really,
and you're probably just going to be grabbing something that's straight away there. You're not going to be thinking about cooking a healthy meal. So it can throw everything off.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point, because by that stage, you're desperate to get something inside you.
Yeah.
You want something that's not going to take any time at all to prepare. So you're quite right. Out come the biscuits.
Well, there you go. Did you find yourself finding a different routine with the restaurant closed?
I did try to maintain a steady routine as possible, but it was difficult. I have to say, it really was difficult without having that structure of knowing, right, this is breakfast time. This is my time to do some work in the morning. Now we have to prep for lunch. Without having that structure there, it was harder. It was harder. But as you said, you have to make an effort. You have to make an effort. And I found it helped if I did have something nice to eat that I had to prepare. Then I would make the time in the day, and I would tend to eat at the correct time.
That is actually something I experienced a lot during the last months. Many of my customers did prefer the work where I actually developed a meal plan for them. So they knew when they had to prepare what, they knew when to buy what, and they knew my meal plan basically provided their new daily structure.
Yes.
Many people liked that because they didn't have to think about it. That is something that most people, for me, still, I don't really get it because I think about food constantly, like 24/7. But many people feel quite annoyed about the fact that they have to think about what they can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Many people find that stressful. And for some, it's even a burden just to think about, what do I cook?
That's interesting.
Yes.
But for lots of people, once there is an idea there, the actual cooking itself is therapeutic as well, isn't it? The process of doing the cooking is good.
Don't ask me.
You don't cook?
Oh, I cook still on a daily basis. I quite enjoy it. It's my me time.
James, when you've got a routine in place, when there's a timetable, what's the next stage, do you think, for ensuring a healthy diet for the mind?
Yeah, so I think that's probably the first thing. And I think the second thing that we've just been talking about is try to, as much as possible, to cook at home, to cook from fresh. If you're able to do that, that again makes everything much easier. The next thing I think is probably to try to make sure you're having some fruit or vegetables at each meal. And then also, like B said, probably also trying to cut down on sugar intake, especially sugary drinks.
Okay.
So I think as a kind of step process, they're usually the ones to kind of go through.
The ones to keep an eye on. We've got some questions coming in. If people in the audience do want to ask questions, there's a Q&A box, and those get fed through to me. Somebody asks, I'm working from home and find I'm snacking a lot, meaning that I'm not hungry for a meal at night. Is this bad for my mental and physical health? And I suppose, in what way is that bad, James?
I think it could be bad for your bad for your health generally. So from a mental health point of view, it's not necessarily going to have a massive impact, but what it could be doing is when you're missing that meal, it's just going to be making your blood sugar level drop, and you're going to generally get those feelings of kind of irritation and of like low energy, and generally it will just make your mood dip a little. So it will just make anything that you've got to deal with that little bit harder to deal with.
Plus, once your blood sugar drops, that is when you then start to maybe stress eat, because then you get that hunger flash at some point, and then you just start to randomly literally stuff everything you just get. So
exactly, because the kind of snacks you're going to be choosing, they're probably not going to be something that's going to be also filling you up for very long. Okay, it's not going to have that satiety. So that little snack that you're going to have, you're going to be missing out on lots of nutrients anyway, which in the long run might start to affect your physical health. But in the short run, the biscuits or the chocolate bar is going to fill you up for 10 minutes or half an hour, and you'll feel hungry again.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I suppose we're all used to the internet connected to us. We'll all know the experience of maybe snapping at somebody because you're irritated, and then in hindsight realizing I was just really tired, or I'd not eaten yet.
Exactly, yeah.
I'd eaten too much, and these things, it affects your mood that much, doesn't it? I suppose there's another question here, which I suppose is related, perhaps to you, B. What foods should we be eating more of, and what foods should I be avoiding to have positive effect on my mental health? So, are there specifics that you recommend?
Actually, I do recommend two specifics to nearly everyone. So one of them is try to avoid every kind of processed food, because you never know what's in them. I know it's sometimes the easiest solution to go for one of those microwave meals, but you never know what's exactly in them. The other thing is, and except for the sugar, and I already mentioned that earlier, is try to maintain your carb intake. So stay away from everything that has something that you call the high glycemic index. So stuff like pale white bread or the biscuits. I'm sorry, guys. So basically everything that raises your blood sugar immediately, like, as I say, pale white bread, like processed carbs, this is the stuff that you should lower the intake. You can still have carbs, like you can still have your pasta, but go for carbs that are actually good for you, carbs you get from fruits and vegetables, carbs you get from nutrition dense kind of bread, like the wholemeal bread. Have your oats in the morning, for example. That is something that is usually I recommend every time still. I know porridge is not everyone's cup of tea, but there's so much stuff now you can have in the morning, but that is stuff that feeds you for a very long time, and it doesn't raise the blood sugar level like in rocket speed. It's like, it gives you a little push, but then it stays there. And so you don't have that crash then for lunch where you're probably not going to nibble for the carrot then. But this, so this is what I usually recommend. Sugar, maintain the carbs, then you're already on a good way. As I say, I still have my pizza or my pasta. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask what might be a dumb question, but processed foods is a term that comes up a lot. What does that encompass? Because it seems like a fairly broad term.
Processed food basically is everything from the ready-to-eat aisle. So when you have a can of soup, the sachet where you just eat water to finish your sauce, all of those ready meals, everything that's basically you just have to pop into the white microwave or pop into a water bath, that is what we call processed food.
That's interesting. I mean, cans of soup, for example, would be not necessarily something I'd think of to be wary of or to be aware of.
I like to quote my grandmother, who was an amazing chef. She already told me, when you read the ingredients and there's one ingredient on the can that you can't even spell, don't buy it and don't eat it.
James, is that sound advice for you?
Yeah, and I mean, there is a saying which I think can be quite a good rule of thumb, that is to try to only eat foods that your grandmother would recognize. So they're going to be the sort of less processed things. Yeah, but it can be a bit of a minefield, processed food, because there's no like official definition of it. But I agree that they're definitely the things to avoid. Yeah.
Lorenzo, I'm sure being around the restaurant, you're pretty aware of the provenance of pretty much everything food-wise in your life. But are you a healthy eater, or is it something you have to work on?
Well, I think actually I've always been fairly healthy. I've always liked my fruit and vegetables. So going back to quite a few decades, I always tend to start the day with fruit. And as you mentioned, I'm quite a fan of porridge. I wasn't for a long time, but I've got back into it recently in the last year or so, and for exactly the reasons you mentioned. It sits rather well and keeps you full for quite a few hours, so you don't feel that urge to snack.
Yeah, it keeps you full, but not to a level where you are like, oof.
Yes. Probably as well, being that I've of a mixed Mediterranean background, my father, as you can probably tell from my name, is Italian, and my mother is Greek Cypriot. So I've grown up around the Southern Mediterranean cuisine. So both Greek food and Italian food, which from the backgrounds my parents came from, which were farming backgrounds. No such thing as processed foods when my parents were young, or they worked on the farm and they ate what they grew. So I was fortunate enough as a child, that's what I had to eat. And I look back now with great fondness and realize how lucky I was to, I didn't know what it was to have fish fingers or something that you could buy in the supermarket, So yes, having parents that had a restaurant and a mum who was a chef was a great advantage.
For perhaps for people who might not have been to the restaurant, what kind of menu do you have beyond that background?
Well, we're mainly Italian. We're kind of broadly Italian. We're not region specific, but we always hint a little bit because of my mum's background. Every now and then we kind of throw people off by putting the odd Greek dish in there. My mum still sometimes makes terra masalata. And you've ever had my mum's terra masalata, and then you'll compare it to something you get in a supermarket, you'll know the difference. You'll know the difference. So yes, occasionally moussaka, we might put that on. And it's rather nice, I do have to say. I have to leave some for the customers.
Well, I'm getting hungry. We've got a few more questions coming in from the audience. So actually, probably a fairly quick question for B, possibly. What would be a healthy snack?
Healthy snack. It doesn't necessarily need to be the carrot and cucumber stick thingy. I, for example, like nut bars a lot, and those days you can get them everywhere. Just check for the label. Ideally, that there's not too many ingredients in there that you don't know. So nut bars are good. Basically, you can have a chocolate bar, seriously, as I said. Don't be too judgmental. Healthy snack, I'm very good with all of those fruit bars, fruit, vegetable, but also like a hummus. I like as a snack to just have a nice piece of bread or a cracker and dip it in a hummus. It's good for me and it's actually feeding me, and it's better than reaching for a Pop-Tart.
I'm asking this for myself, perhaps James. Proper dark chocolate rather than the sugary normal bars. Is that good for me, or am I conning myself?
Yes, I mean it's going to be much more preferable than a dairy milk or a Mars bar, and the dark chocolate itself does have some health benefits. And probably the benefit of the dark chocolate is because it's got such a strong taste, you tend not to eat as much of it.
This is true, yeah.
I don't know, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, usually you just have like one bar of dark chocolate instead of half a piece of a milk chocolate, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's good news. That's the best news I've had all day. Another question. Another question from the audience. I used to enjoy cooking before COVID, but now I'm at home all of the time and it's a bit of a chore, a bit more of a chore than something I enjoy. Has anybody got any ideas on how I can get my love back for cooking? Lorenzo, any thoughts on finding the joy in cooking?
Trying something completely different. I think the monotony of perhaps preparing the same dish over and over again over the last year will destroy your love of that particular dish, or the love of cooking. I would strongly advise. I found that for myself personally, that's been a benefit, because let's face it, we've all had a lot more time on our hands in the last year or so.
Slightly.
So why not put it to good use and try something different?
That's a great answer. Absolutely. We'll move on to another question, actually. I found I'm drinking way too much caffeine over the last year whilst working from home. Drinking 6 to 8 mugs of coffee. Mainly as a routine to break up the day. Any tips to help reduce the amount or substitute with a more healthy option? James, any tips on making the caffeine drinking healthier?
Well, I mean, yeah, probably 6 to 8 cups of coffee is probably too much for most people, and at that point it can start affecting your sleep and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it can actually make you feel a bit anxious as well if you're drinking a lot of it. I mean, I suppose there's 2 approaches really. You either gradually reduce it slowly and maybe start using decaf. You can get some nice decaf coffees now, or you try to cut it out completely, and just go for a short period of time of cutting it out. And that kind of depends on the individual. Some people would prefer to gradually reduce it. Other people just would find that very difficult, would keep going back to it, and they would prefer to just stop it kind of cold turkey. So there's your choice.
I fully agree. 6 to 8 is definitely too much. So what I experienced in the past, that many people went really well with the decaf thing. and find time to actually enjoy those cups. Treat them as a little special treat. Like say,
oh, we got a bit of feedback.
Yeah, start with like, okay, we go from 6 cups down to 4 cups, and these 4 cups are very special. And if you then go 2 of those 4 cups are decaf, then you're already on a good way, because sometimes it's just about having the mug in your hand. It's not about the actual caffeine. It's about having that mug thing in your hand. So for example, I was massively addicted to caffeine. I'm not lying about that. And so that was actually good for me, that I wasn't in a restaurant anymore, because I reduced from 8 mugs to just a very strong double espresso in the morning. And then sometimes I have 1 in the afternoon, but usually not after 4. And I enjoy these. These are like my special little treats.
It's obviously it's very different, but I used to be a fairly heavy smoker. And the routine was part of it. It's not there. Obviously, there's the chemical addiction, but the routine is something to work out as well. So that's something to work on too. Another question. I am worried that as I have been furloughed for much of the last year, I've been less active. I work in construction. Therefore, I'm putting on weight. Where should I go if I want some advice on how to improve this? James, any thoughts on that?
I think depending on the area in which the person lives, you can get a referral to a dietitian through your GP. So I'd say, particularly, say I know I used to work in Islington. I know that if you live in the borough of Islington or the borough of Camden, I believe you can get a free consultations with an NHS dietitian. So I think that could be one option.
So try your GP first and see where they can send you. Okay. Let's as we get towards the end, let's talk a little bit about food. What I want to know is what people's real comfort foods are. What are the meals that actually just make you feel good? B, perhaps you'd like to go first.
Oh, that is okay. I have to say, I really, really enjoy my veggies. I have hey, there you
Hello, Lorenzo. We've now got 2 Lorenzos, and one of them we can see.
So I have a super weird love for everything like Brussels sprouts, broccoli. I love that stuff. But one of my ultimate guilty pleasures actually is a real carbonara. That doesn't fit in any of my dietary advices, but sometimes I just need to have it. The other stuff that is real comfort food for me is everything Vietnamese, because I've lived in that country for a very long time. It's actually very healthy, but as soon as I just have those kind of different smells in my nose, I immediately start to smile and I'm happy even before I had my first bite. So yeah, Vietnamese veggies and sometimes a carbonara. That then of course comes with a glass of wine, and that's my cheat day then.
World's okay for a minute. Lorenzo, what about you? What's the comfort food for you?
The comfort food for me, my default for several years has been Chinese food. It's something that's completely different from the Italian food or the Greek food, which I love, but of course I'm surrounded by it. So I usually like to go for something completely different. And Chinese food is a big favorite of mine.
Any particulars? Which dishes do you go for?
Probably all the usual unhealthy ones. A friend of mine got me recently into, or a few years ago at least, sweet and sour prawns, which of course are deep fried. Not the best, but they're just wonderful, delicious. Deep fried chili beef. So these are all the unhealthy ones really coming up. I do quite like that. Chicken with cashew nuts. That's another big favorite. So
that's delicious. And we might have timed this slightly wrong, because I'm not sure I can hold out another couple of hours after this.
Those aero bars will only last you so long.
Well, no, exactly. Yeah, they're literally just bubbles. James, what about you? What's your comfort food?
Pies, I think, probably a pie.
Yeah.
So that would be both like a kind of meat pie in the winter, and then maybe also a pork pie. I love pork pies.
Oh, okay.
And when you're coming into this, like as a sort of picnic thing. I mean, I can't really walk past a pork pie in the supermarket without putting it in my trolley, to be honest. That's probably my thing.
Another thing I can't walk past is everything salted caramel, salted butterscotch. Seriously, I can pour it on everything. I see a couple of nods there.
Yes. Quite partial to it myself. Yes.
Well, why does everybody think it is we get so passionate about food? Obviously, our body it gives us signs about what's good and bad for us, but it's beyond that, isn't it? Obviously, the art of cooking creates something special, and the way our eyes have all glazed over at various points in the last few minutes describing some of those dishes. James, any thoughts on why it's so central to us?
I think I think a lot of it is due to the kind of social aspect of food. That it's often on some occasion like Christmas or some celebration, or it could just be the fact that you really enjoy eating with your family and those kind of memories that you get when you're
Yes.
eating. For me, that's probably where it comes from.
I think it's also because food is probably one of the rare things that is always a multi-sensual experience. Like you have the smell, you have the sound, you have the visual impact, but you also know the minute you taste it, it goes into your tummy, from there it goes to your guts are connected to your emotional center. So this is what I think why food makes us happy, because it's a multi-sensual kind of thing. Plus what James just said, like all of these dishes we just mentioned, most of them are usually connected to fun memories that usually go back into your childhood.
Absolutely.
Or to a special place where you've been. And so as I said, like whenever I have the smell of Vietnamese food, I'm already smiling because I love being in that country. So it's usually connected to emotions.
Lorenzo, the social side of it, you must see every day. I mean, that's your
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it gives me, a particular thrill, as it has to my parents over the decades we've been here, to see people coming in with their families, sitting down, interacting together, and the enjoyment they get from selecting certain items from the menu and waiting for the food to come and then sitting there and enjoying everything. And again, we talk about the comfort food aspect. We've got lots of clients that come here that as soon as they come through the door, I pretty much know what they're going to have, because like we all do, we all have our favorites at certain establishments we'll go to, and we go to them particularly because we have those dishes in our mind. Even as you said, we have that connotation.
Yeah, you're drooling over something already on the way over there.
Yes, correct. Before you even get there, you're thinking about it, and then you always regret it if you choose something else. And you think, I should have had that. So it's wonderful. I said, we've been very fortunate over the years. It's such a great thing to see in the social aspect here, and the interaction and the connection between the food and people's enjoyment, and how we can see sometimes how you can change a person's day. That's something that gives me particular pleasure. We have rooms as well as a restaurant, and we have quite a few people who'll stay here and go to work. And so several times I've had people who've come here who've not had the best day at work for various reasons, but they've come down, and it's just to see how their mood changed when they can sit down, they can decompress. They'll order something that I know is a favorite dish of theirs, glass of wine, and then that smile returns.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful place to just about wrap up. Just quickly, James, is there anything you'd like to signpost for people who may have concerns, or where should they go if they're worried about diet and mental health?
I think probably the thing I was going to recommend is there's a very good book if you're interested in learning more about this kind of subject, which is called Brain Changer by Felice Jacka. She's one of the kind of leading researchers into this area, because it's still quite an emerging area. So that's what I'd probably say. I think otherwise, in terms of seeing a dietitian, it's probably to go through your GP. Yeah.
Brilliant. Bea, would you like it to add anything to that?
I can give one piece of advice that is of course related to the cause that I'm representing. We came actually up with a lot of little online trainings on the homepage of the Burn Chef program, where you can actually learn what is healthy habits. It's all broken down in tiny little lectures that some of them only are like 10 minutes, some of them are like 30 minutes. And they are easily approachable from everywhere. We are working with a lot of visual tools. So literally we have created checklists like this is good for you, this is not so good for you. So yeah, and I highly recommend check that one out. And also never underestimate the power of those days, social media. There is actually a lot of good things, especially when you sign up for one of those closed Facebook groups. Many of them do actually help, because usually when you join one of those groups, you know you're in that group with other people who have the same reason to be there. So exchange is a very, very important point as well.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all three of you for joining us today. It's been really fun and really interesting and really useful, I think. So thank you once again, James Clark, Lorenzo Stella, and Bea Schultz.
Thanks a lot.